You think microwave meals are just speedy comfort? Think again. There's a hidden trade-off hiding behind that quick ding. Picture this. You're busy, maybe tired, maybe living alone, and a frozen meal promises to be a lifeline. But what if those trays of food are sneaky substitutes, looking like a meal, but silently shortchanging your body? Welcome to the world of frozen shortcuts, where shape and flavor often win over substance. Let's open our freezer and meet the first favorite you might want to reconsider. Microwavable Salisbury steak dinners, once warm nostalgia, are now often nothing but texture tricks and sodium traps. Imagine biting into what feels like paste, salted uncooked filler, labeled boldly as beef. A retired food safety inspector tells us the steak had less than 50% real meat. The rest was soy protein, textured vegetable filler, modified starch masquerading as muscle. The gravy? No slow simmer here. It's powdered flavor enhancers and caramel color, designed to mimic the look of a hearty, home-cooked sauce. MSG lurks inside too, raising alarms for anyone who's sensitive to it. Instead of comfort, many seniors find heartburn and fatigue. A retired factory supervisor quietly admitted, "These meals are engineered to hit calorie counts without nourishing the eater." The box shows a hearty plate on your tray, grayish, thin, and missing that original feeling. Real? Not anymore. Now let's jump to frozen chicken Alfredo bowls, a supposed creamy indulgence. You expect warmth and richness in under 6 minutes, and older adults lean in because it feels like a treat. But scratch the surface. Stabilizers, thickening gums, modified cornstarch. They survive the fridge to microwave ride, but leave behind oil-based textures pretending to be dairy. A former nutritionist found one version clocked more than 1,000 milligrams sodium and just scattered chicken pieces, sometimes mechanically separated poultry. The sauce? Mouth-coating oil without balanced flavor. The pasta? Par-cooked and rubbery. Eat it twice in a week, and users say they feel bloated and exhausted, like chewing through preservatives, not comfort. Both these meals fill the stomach but steal the nourishment, quietly eroding what real food used to feel like. Now, if you're still with us, trust me, what comes next will be a closer look at the breakfast routines we've been sold. Stay tuned for part 2, where we tear into microwavable breakfast bowls, meatloaf, and more. There's plenty of hidden compromise left to uncover. Let's talk breakfast. Because if the most important meal of the day starts with a lie, what else is slipping past us? Microwave breakfast bowls look like a good idea. Eggs, sausage, potatoes, all in one tray. For seniors, they check the boxes. Quick, filling, familiar. But pop the lid and what you get feels off. One longtime shopper told us her usual bowl started tasting sweeter and greasier out of nowhere. Sugar was in the top 5 ingredients, in eggs and potatoes. 15 grams in some cases, closer to a donut than a hearty meal. The eggs? Poured from cartons, cooked once, frozen, reheated again. The texture, rubbery. The cheese? Not actual cheese, but something labeled cheese product. Think oil-based shreds built to melt, not nourish. The sausage is heavily seasoned to cover inconsistencies, often made from reprocessed trimmings. And those potatoes? Chemically treated to keep them looking okay after the microwave wrecks their texture. It fills you up. But a few hours later, people report sluggishness, gassiness, and hunger creeping back. It's a kind of trick meal, feels full, but acts empty. The label might promise protein-packed or hearty, but those are just marketing masks for high sodium, low quality, and a side of regret. It's not breakfast, it's a bait and switch. Now rewind to dinner. Remember meatloaf? That nostalgic Sunday night favorite? In the frozen aisle, it's a cardboard cutout of what it used to be. Retired home cooks say it looks the part, but tastes synthetic. Dry in the middle, soggy at the edge, with a chemical aftertaste no gravy can fix. Why? Because the meat often includes soy concentrates and processed flours, cheaper, longer lasting, and way less satisfying. And the gravy? It's a brownish liquid, not a sauce, built from sodium-heavy powder mixes, not pan drippings. A former factory worker admitted the meatloaf is sprayed with oil before sealing, just to look juicier when heated. But your body isn't fooled. The sodium hits hard. Some meals clock in at nearly half your daily max in one go. For seniors watching blood pressure or digestion, this is the kind of home-style meal that backfires after the first bite. Let's slide into something that should be universally comforting: mac and cheese. But what's in that yellow goo under the plastic wrap? Not cheese, not really. More like a science experiment in stability. You've got whey, oil, modified starch, artificial colors, and emulsifiers making something that only looks creamy. One dietitian told us her mac and cheese separated into an oily mess 30 seconds after heating. The pasta, already mushy from being overcooked before freezing. Add high sodium, sometimes more than 1,000 milligrams per serving. And you've got a side dish disguised as comfort, but packed like a salt bomb. Here's the worst part. It's not built for taste, just optics. Factory insiders say the cheese blends are engineered to look melty under heat, not taste authentic. You'll feel full for a minute. Then comes the crash, fatigue, dry mouth, maybe even nausea. Especially risky for seniors managing kidney or heart issues. This isn't the mac your grandmother made. It's an edible illusion. And speaking of illusions, fried rice. What used to be a smart way to turn leftovers into something delicious has now been turned inside out. One retired Army cook microwaved his go-to frozen fried rice and was shocked. Gummy grains, peas, and carrots galore, but hardly any protein. Not a mistake, a strategy. Manufacturers bulk these meals with cheap starches and minimal meat. Chicken, shrimp, or beef are scattered in like garnish. The sauce, mostly soy powder, sugar, and thickener, sometimes with added artificial smoke to trick your nose into thinking something was actually wok fried. Spoiler: it wasn't. Workers tell us these meals are steamed in giant batches, everything dumped in together. So there's no char, no flavor contrast, no texture, just soft, salty mush. And nutritionally, it's all carbs, barely any fiber or real protein. That leads to blood sugar spikes, not real energy. What was once a stir-fried savior is now a high-sodium trick that leaves you drained instead of fed. Still with me? Good. Because the next round is where frozen food really starts to reveal its hand. Burrito bowls, fish dinners, and pasta dishes that promise balance but deliver only filler. Keep watching, we're just getting warmed up. You ever open a frozen burrito bowl and feel like something's missing? You're not wrong. These meals promise big: protein, flavor, convenience. But what they really serve is mostly rice. One retired nurse told us she had to dig around her tray just to find the meat. The beans, mushy. The veggies, barely there. Manufacturers know rice is cheap and filling, so they load these bowls with it. The meat, often soy crumbles or textured vegetable protein dressed up to look like chicken or beef. The sauces, thickened with cornstarch and sweetened to distract from how bland the rest is. What you're left with is a dish that tastes weirdly sweet and leaves you feeling stuffed but not satisfied. And the worst part? The packaging. Bright colors, words like hearty, balanced, protein-packed. It's a costume for what's really a cheap, high-carb filler bowl. For seniors managing diabetes or blood pressure, these stealth sugars and salts are more than just misleading. They're risky. Now let's move from land to sea. Frozen fish dinners. You'd think they'd be safe. Fish is healthy, right? But if you've ever microwaved one of these and your kitchen started smelling like a bait shop, you already know the problem. That smell isn't normal. It's a sign of fish that's been poorly handled before freezing. Labels often say white fish or fillet style, without naming the species. Why? Because it's usually a mix of low-cost fish like pollock, minced and molded into shape. Factory workers have confirmed these are fish blocks, not fillets. They're formed in molds and breaded not to enhance the taste, but to hide it. Then there's the sauce, lemon butter, that contains no lemon and no butter, just citric acid, oil flavoring, and shelf-stable fat. Omega-3s, barely detectable. Sodium, sky high. Seniors trying to make heart-healthy choices may end up with a tray of starch and salt disguised as seafood. How about pasta primavera? A dish that should scream fresh, light, veggie forward. But in frozen form, it's more like beige on beige. One retired school teacher said her tray had exactly 3 slices of zucchini and a couple peas. Meanwhile, the pasta, overcooked rotini or penne, is the main event. Why? Because pasta is cheaper than vegetables. Inside the sauce, oil, artificial cheese powder, maybe some thickener. Not a hint of the freshness you'd expect from real primavera. It leaves a greasy film in your mouth and not much else. Nutritionally, it's a carb bomb with barely any fiber or protein. And once again, the label lies. Garden fresh taste? Please. Now buckle up, stuffed peppers. Once a classic comfort meal, now hollowed out into something sad. A big mushy pepper shell filled with rice and a mysterious blend of meat that often resembles a paste. A retired grandfather picked one up for nostalgia's sake and got a limp pepper with a bland, gluey center. He said it felt like betrayal on a plate. Former plant workers say the fillings are often pre-cooked in vats, piped into the peppers, and flash frozen. The pepper? Overcooked. The filling? Mostly starch. Some brands don't even include a whole pepper, just chopped bits mixed into flavored rice. Sodium spikes over 800 milligrams, protein barely scrapes 10 grams. Let's talk enchiladas, another dish built on memories. Corn tortillas, rich sauce, melty cheese, but frozen versions? They melt into a soggy mess with cheese that separates and sauce that tastes like spicy ketchup. One retired teacher described it as soup with tortillas floating in it. Why? Because the fillings are diluted. Refried bean paste or soy protein mix stuffed inside underseasoned tortillas. Sauce is thickened tomato base. The cheese? Usually a processed oil blend chosen for its ability to melt, not taste. Some enchilada trays labeled beef have less than 15% actual meat, and what's left is mostly salt, starch, and disappointment. You're starting to see the pattern, right? These aren't isolated meals. They're all built from the same playbook. Cheap fillers, sodium overload, real ingredients replaced by texture mimics and flavor enhancers. In the final section, we're pulling the curtain back on the last wave of frozen favorites. Pot pies, lasagna, shepherd's pie, quesadillas. Meals designed to look familiar but built to fool the senses. And the closer you look, the more it becomes clear. This isn't just about frozen food. It's about trust, memory, and the slow fading of real meals from our everyday lives. You're going to want to see how this ends. Stick around. Let's wrap this up with the grand finale. The frozen comfort foods most likely sitting in your freezer right now. They look familiar. They smell like memory. But what you're actually getting? It's something else entirely. Let's start with chicken pot pie, the gold standard of cozy, or it used to be. Flaky crust, creamy filling, chunks of chicken and veggies, that's the picture. But peel back the crust, and you'll find the modern version is mostly gravy and air. One retired librarian counted just 3 small pieces of chicken in her entire pie. 3. The rest, thick sauce, and a crust that's more filler than flour. These pot pies are built from the outside in. Crust gets the spotlight. The gravy, usually built from starch and salt, is thickened to bulk out the middle. And the meat? often mechanically separated or made from white meat blends. The vegetables? Tiny, rehydrated specks that turn to mush. It's cheap to make, fast to heat, and utterly forgettable to eat. The sodium? Up to 900 milligrams in some pies. That's nearly half your daily max, stuffed inside what's supposed to be a single cozy dinner. Now let's talk lasagna. Remember the bubbling, layered kind? The kind you waited on? In frozen form, it's more like pasta paste in disguise. A retired nurse said hers collapsed into a salty mess. The pasta sheets are ultra-thin to speed up cooking and fall apart under heat. The meat sauce, more soy protein than beef. Some brands even have more sugar than tomato in their tomato sauce. The cheese? It's not mozzarella. It's a processed blend made for stretch and visual appeal. Flavor? Not the priority. Former factory workers confirm it's assembled like a puzzle, built for freeze-thaw stability, not Sunday dinner satisfaction. And portion sizes? Labeled as 2 servings but realistically eaten in 1. Still hungry afterward? Of course you are. The meal filled a tray, but not your body. Shepherd's pie. What could go wrong? Turns out, just about everything. One senior cut into her frozen version and found a sea of mashed potatoes, a whisper of meat, and a gravy that tasted more like thickened broth. Some versions don't even include real beef, just lentils or soy-textured protein hidden under a thick, starchy lid. And the mashed potatoes? Not real mash. They're whipped with shelf-stable oils and emulsifiers to stay smooth after freezing, but the result is a topping that's oddly artificial, more like instant mix than anything Grandma made. Nutritionally, it's closer to a starchy side dish than a full meal. Protein is low, sodium is high, and fiber is basically absent. And last but not least, the frozen quesadilla. It should be simple. Tortilla, cheese, maybe a little meat or veg. Easy, right? But out of the microwave, it's a different beast entirely. One senior told us hers was soggy, rubbery, and nearly flavorless. The tortilla steams instead of crisping. The cheese melts into an oily puddle. The filling? Usually chicken-flavored filler, ground meat mixed with starch and binders, and the vegetables are just flakes and sauce. Former plant staff admitted these are among the most aggressively cost-optimized frozen foods. Translation: built to hit a low price, not to taste like food. They're greasy, heavy, and strangely quiet on flavor. The fat content? Often higher than a cheeseburger. But you wouldn't know that from the label. It's the kind of product that promises a snack and delivers a stomachache. And that's the pattern. Time and again, we're trading away substance for speed, nostalgia for imitation, food that looks the part but leaves your body asking, "What was that?"